all-time shooter, who's your top 3 best perimeter shooters would that be? And you can include yourself.
Okay. I would say that the kid out of Marietta, Dale Ellis. Maybe the kid out of the University of Tennessee, Dale Ellis. And the former Sonic player, Dale Ellis.
He was widely believed to be the best shooter in NBA history during his time in the league, the first player to ever hit 1,000 threes and participate in the most three-point shootouts with 7 appearances. And although his game was predicated on his shooting, he was more than just a shooter, as his 4 straight seasons of at least 23.5 points per game in Seattle solidified him as a top player in the league in the late 80s. But that same stretch of incredible basketball was also filled with a slew of legal troubles, both minor and severe, that could have not only altered his career, but also his life. And even though he may have deserved some more severe punishments, Dale Ellis was able to clean up his act following a trade out of the place he had made his name as an NBA star. And even though he never found the same success after his stint in Seattle, he also never found himself in the headlines, and enjoyed a second half of a career that was filled with consistent and efficient play on some great teams. He definitely made mistakes, but he eventually would leave those in the past. And if we're talking strictly basketball, Dale Ellis's no-nonsense, go-about-my-business style of play wasn't the most exciting, but it got the job done and then some. So today, we're going to go more in depth on the ups and downs of the career of Dale Ellis. Let's jog your memory. Dale Ellis tragically lost his father at age 9, but was still raised to be a gentleman by his mother. When attending Marietta High School, where he was a standout basketball player, earning All-State his last 2 years and averaging 23.6 points and 15.6 rebounds, he showed great character in being an incredibly disciplined individual and would even be referred to as a social pioneer, as he was credited with helping to bring together one of the first integrated classes in the school. Ellis chose the University of Tennessee, where he would play a bench role in his first season, but still received solid minutes at just over 21 per game. Tennessee was led by their star senior and future NBAer Reggie Johnson, as well as another NBA player-to-be in junior Howard Wood. Ellis would finish 4th on the team in scoring and have his highest assist average of his career. And the Vols would have an overall record of 18-11, which included a tournament berth. Ellis would struggle in 14 minutes of play in a first-round win versus Furman, as he shot just 1 of 6 for 2 points. He played better in the second round versus Maryland, as he shot 3 of 6 for 7 points. But they were still defeated, which ended a freshman season that saw Ellis average about 7 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. With Johnson gone to the NBA, Ellis stepped up as the team's top scorer alongside Wood and junior Gary Carter. Ellis raised his points, rebounds, and steals, while also shooting nearly 60% from the field, which led to the program voting him the most improved player on the team. Tennessee would finish 1981 with 21 wins, which would be the highest win total of Ellis's time there, and would earn another tournament berth. Round 1 saw the Vols beat Virginia Commonwealth by 2 points in OT, as Ellis led the team in scoring with 22 points on 10 of 13 shooting in 45 minutes of play. The next round brought another Virginia team, but this one was led by National Player of the Year Ralph Sampson. Yet, surprisingly, he would score just 9 points on 4 of 13 shooting, but no one on Tennessee could get it going, as Ellis would be the only player to crack double figures, and he put up 13 points on 50% from the field, while also committing a game-high 5 turnovers. And this would result in a loss for Tennessee, as Ellis's sophomore season ended with averages of about 17.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, and half an assist per game. Wood had graduated, and Carter would only play 6 games due to academic ineligibility, so it was Ellis's team going into his junior year, and he responded with his best year to date, as he started all 30 games, finished 3rd in the SEC in scoring, and had the 2nd highest field goal percentage in the nation at 65.4%. Additionally, he led the Vols in steals with 1.6 per game, which included a 7-steal game versus Mississippi State on January 20th. He led Tennessee to a 20-10 record and a tournament berth, and he would have his best tournament performance of his career, as he would have 23 points and 2 steals on 60% shooting in the first round defeat of Louisiana. But then, in a much closer rematch of last year, they would lose to Virginia by 3 in round 2, as Sampson played better with 19-9 on over 64% from the field, and Ellis would put up 16 points and 9 boards on 50% shooting, but would foul out in the final minutes of the game. And Ellis's junior season would end with averages of about 21 points, 6.5 rebounds, and half an assist per game. Ellis and junior Michael Brooks were the team's top 2 players in the 83 season, which would be Ellis's best as he played and started in all 32 games, while averaging a career high in scoring and rebounding and shooting over 60%. And this would include a 35-point game in a win over Auburn on February 22nd, as well as a career high 39 in a win over Oklahoma City on December 22nd. Tennessee would finish with an overall record of 20-12, but it is worth mentioning that the strength of their schedule was ranked number 8 in the nation, the highest of Ellis's time with the Vols. They would make the tournament for the 4th straight year of Ellis's tenure and squeak by Doc Rivers and Marquette in round 1, where Ellis would put up a game-high 20 points on 7 of 9 from the field, but just 6 of 10 from the free throw line. But Tennessee would lose to 1-seeded Louisville in round 2, as Ellis would score just 13 points on 6 of 13 from the field and commit 5 turnovers. And his senior season ended with him putting up averages of about 22.5 points, 6.5 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. Ellis entered the NBA draft, where he would be selected 9th overall by the Dallas Mavericks, who already had 2 of the best wings in the league in Mark Aguirre and Rolando Blackman, meaning Ellis would find himself stuck on the bench for most of his time in Dallas. But just a couple weeks after the draft, Ellis would make his first poor decision of many during the first portion of his career, as he was arrested and charged with driving while intoxicated. However, he would plead not guilty and the charges would be dropped. So Ellis went into the 84 season stationed pretty deep on the bench, as he would be the 9th man in the rotation, playing about 18 minutes a game in 67 contests, but would still be the 2nd leading bench scorer behind Jay Vincent. And he would have a 31-point performance in a loss to Golden State in the final game of the regular season. Dallas would finish 43-39 and draw Seattle in the first round, and Ellis would see action in 3 games and put up a total of 14 points for the series. But his performance was improving each game, and the Mavs would lose to the Lakers in 5 in round 2. But Ellis would get more playing time, and even though he started the series with a 5-point game 1 on 2 of 10 shooting, then a 4-point game 2 on 1 of 11 shooting, he scored double figures in each of the last 3 games, and even started game 5 for an injured Aguirre, but again struggled from the field, going 4 of 14 in the series-ending loss. But Ellis's rookie season would see him average about 8 points, 3.5 rebounds, and an assist per game. 1985 was much of the same for Ellis. He received a couple more minutes per game and responded by upping his scoring average by just over a point. But his place in the rotation didn't really change, as rookie Sam Perkins received a larger role than he did. Ellis would begin to show his long-range ability this year, as he went from averaging less than half a 3-point attempt per game to a team-leading 1.5 this season, and hit them at 38.5%, which was good for 2nd on the team. The Mavs finished with 1 game better than the previous year, at 44-38, but had a worse playoff showing, as they lost to the Blazers in 4 in the first round. Ellis would play all 4 games, even starting 1, but he was up and down and wouldn't hit double figures in any game. So Ellis's 2nd uneventful season ended with him averaging about 9.5 points, 2 rebounds, and 3.5 assists per game. 1986 found Ellis in an even lesser bench role alongside rookie Detlef Schrempf. Ellis would receive just 15 minutes per game, as Jay Vincent played the healthiest season of his career since Ellis was drafted, and the Mavs had made a trade for James Donaldson. Ellis did, however, become the team's 3-point specialist, as he hoisted nearly 2.5 per game, which was first on the team by far, and he would make over 36% of them to lead the team, leading to him participating in the first of many 3-point contests, where he finished 3rd. However, he would shoot the worst field goal percentage of his entire career at 41.1%. The Mavs again finished 44-38, and this time got the Jazz in round 1. They beat the Jazz in 4, but Ellis wasn't much of a factor, as he averaged under 3 points on just 8 minutes per game, and did not play in game 4. Ellis would receive more than double the playing time in game 1 of the round 2 series versus the Lakers, and responded with 16 points on over 71% shooting, but then after just 6 points in 20 minutes for game 2, and he would be played sparingly in games 3 and 5, while not registering a single point, and did not play in games 4 or 6, as the Mavs lost to the Lakers in 6 games, and Ellis's 3rd season would see him average about 7 points, 2.5 rebounds, and half an assist per game. Luckily for Ellis, after wasting away in Dallas to begin his career, he was traded to the Seattle Supersonics for Al Wood on July 23, 1986, which would begin the greatest on-court stretch of his career, while simultaneously bringing one of the worst off-the-court stretches in league history. But the on-the-court successes could not have started better. Sadly for Sonics fans, the team traded franchise legend Jack Sikma to the Bucks for Alton Lister in the offseason. And remember Lister, he's going to be important later. But the team counteracted this with the addition of Ellis and the selection of Nate McMillan in the 86th draft. And looking at the Sonics regular season record, doesn't raise any flags, as they went 39-43. However, Ellis formed a trio with Tom Chambers and Xavier McDaniel, and together, all three of them played in all 82 games and averaged over 71 points combined, with Ellis being the top scorer on the team. And he would be rewarded with the NBA's Most Improved Player award after bringing up his scoring averages over 17 points, while averaging career highs in rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, and shooting percentage at 51.6%. Additionally, he would shoot nearly 36% from three and would participate in the 87 three-point shootout, where he would finish in 5th place. Even though the Sonics finished below 500, they still made the playoffs against, guess who? Ellis's former team, the Dallas Mavericks. And Ellis clearly wanted revenge, as he would average nearly 30 points and 8 rebounds on over 55% shooting in the Sonics 4-game series win, which included postseason career highs of 43 points and 14 rebounds in a Game 3 win. Ellis rode his hot hand into the second round versus Houston, as he put up 34 in a Game 1 defeat of the defending Western Conference champs. Then, Ellis got more motivation to win, as he was arrested in the early hours of May 4th and charged with hindering arrest, as he was reportedly trying to reason with some off-duty police officers who were struggling with his Sonics teammate Kevin Williams, who had punched a club manager earlier. They were both released shortly after posting bail. And Ellis would respond by dropping 30 in a Game 2 win. He would struggle in Game 3 as he put up just 12 points on less than 27% from the field and 20% from 3 in what would be the only Rockets win. But he would then come back in Games 4 and 5 to put up 32 and 27 respectively, both Sonics wins, as he again led the team in scoring for the series at 28.5 points per game. Unfortunately, the Sonics would be swept by the Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, as Ellis just couldn't keep up his incredible play, as this series saw him crack 20 points just once, while shooting 3 of 13 in Game 1 and 5 of 18 in Game 4, while not making a single 3 all series. But all in all, this was an unexpectedly successful and memorable season for the Sonics, that ended with Ellis putting up averages of about 25 points, 5.5 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. Okay, so this is where Lister comes in. As he was coming off his best season, the Sonics decided to match the $1.2 million offer sheet from the Suns, which upset Ellis, as he was also negotiating for a contract extension and felt he was worth the same kind of money at least. But negotiations would stall, and Ellis would threaten to leave the team. And even though he played, and played well, this season he reportedly would show up late for practice and skip out on promised community appearances, among other things. And then just 8 games into the season, he wrecked a BMW that was loaned to him and abandoned it while also refusing to pay for the damages. But you'd have no idea all this was happening based on his on-the-court play, as he raised his scoring average to nearly 26 points per game on over 50% shooting, and again combined with Chambers and McDaniel to average over 67 points per game, which included 2 47-point games from Ellis in January and a career-high 9 assists in a December 8th win versus Cleveland. The Sonics started 24-15, but would go 20-23 the rest of the way to finish 44-38, and Lister and Ellis would be in the headlines again on March 8th. However, it wouldn't be Alton and Dale. It would be Bobby Joe and Monique, the wives of the players, who would get into a fight over Lister's contract outside the locker room after a game. So the Sonics' chemistry was likely all out of whack going into their first round series versus Denver. But Ellis would come out strong in the first 3 games, getting more efficient with each game, but then would shoot just 6 of 19 in Game 4 and 4 of 9 for a series low 12 points in Game 5 in a series low 26 minutes of action, as the Sonics were bounced out of the playoffs, and Ellis finished as the team's 3rd leading scorer for the series. And his regular season would end with averages of nearly 26 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 2.5 assists per game. He would also compete in his 3rd straight 3-point shootout and achieved the best finish of his career up to that point, as he was runner-up to champion Larry Bird. The trio was no more going into 89, as Chambers had signed with Phoenix, leaving the Sonics to trade for Michael Cage as his replacement. Ellis would receive another traffic violation during the offseason, but this didn't deter the Sonics GM, as Ellis would receive a 6-year, $7.3 million extension after holding out of training camp, making him the 2nd highest paid guard in the league, behind Michael Jordan. Ellis remained a starter, but McDaniel was relegated to his 6th man role, but he would still put up over 20 per game. Ellis was the team's best scorer once again, upping his scoring average to 27.5 points per game, while shooting a career-high 47.8% from 3, as he participated in his 4th straight 3-point shootout, finally winning the crown. But the Ellis roller coaster continued this year, as after being named Player of the Week for the first week of January, he was arrested on January 8th for allegedly striking his wife. However, he would not be disciplined by the Sonics or the league, and would start in his first and only All-Star game about a month later, where he would score 27 points on 12 of 16 shooting. Ellis would still start all 82 games this year and lead the Sonics to a 47-35 record. The Sonics would beat the Rockets in 4 games in round 1, in a good series for Ellis, where he led the team with 23 points on over 47% from 3. But they would run into a much better Lakers team in round 2 and be swept, as Ellis's efficiency went down. However, was still solid at about 42% from the field and 35% from 3. And Ellis's best individual season ended with averages of about 27.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. The Sonics selected Shawn Kemp 17th overall in the draft, and Lister was traded to the Warriors in the offseason for the pick that would become Gary Payton. But Ellis would see his on-court performance decline for the 1990 season, as he shot below 50% for the first time since his trade, and saw his scoring average drop for the first time since the trade, as he would average his lowest points in his 4 full seasons with the Sonics. McDaniel would also return to a starting role for this season, as he continued to average over 20 points per game. On November 9th, Ellis would set a record with 69 minutes played in a quintuple overtime loss to Milwaukee, which saw him score his career high of 53 points. But this was the high point for a season that would come crashing down on him, as after scoring 29 in a January 11th win versus the Mavs, he would be in a near-fatal car accident in the early hours of January 12th, after dropping off Derek Harper, as he crashed into a freeway divider due to suspected intoxicated driving, which he would later be found guilty of. Ellis would sustain 2 broken ribs and a collapsed lung, and ultimately be fined $500 and sentenced to 1 day in jail and 60 hours of community service. Ellis would miss 2 months after the accident, finally returning to the team on March 9th, and wouldn't really miss a step, as he scored double figures in all but 2 games the rest of the way, including a 43-point performance versus Sacramento on April 19th, and a career-high 9 threes the next night versus the Clippers. The Sonics were 16-16 at the time of Ellis's injury, and went 14-14 until his return, then went 11-11 to finish 41-41 and missed the playoffs for the first time in Ellis's career. And in the 55 games he played this year, he averaged about 23.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. The Sonics replaced coach Bernie Bickerstaff with Casey Jones to start the season, and Ellis missed significant time with a foot injury. But then on November 21st, McDaniel and Ellis would get in a fist fight in practice, where Ellis understandably took the worst of it. The reason for the altercation was that allegedly McDaniel wasn't happy with the injured Ellis for arriving late for a game the night before, and then sitting in the Sonics owner's seat at midcourt instead of on the bench with the team, as well as coming to practice unprepared. Ellis would be suspended for 5 days, as he had reportedly been the one to start the fight after throwing a phone at McDaniel. However, the Sonics would move on from both players, as McDaniel would be moved to the Suns in December, and then Ellis would be traded to the Bucks for their disgruntled star 6th man, Ricky Pierce. Ellis would take on Pierce's 6th man role, and put up over 19 a game for the Bucks in 21 games, but a herniated disc would lead him to miss the final 10 games of the year and the postseason, for a 48-34 Bucks team who were swept by the Sixers in round 1. And overall for the year, Ellis put up about 17 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 2 assists per game in 51 games. Ellis would finally have a season not marred by off-the-court troubles, as a healthy Ellis played 81 games as a 6th man for the Bucks, and would even lead the team in scoring. However, the Bucks were just a below-average team, and would finish the season 31-51 and miss the playoffs, with Ellis putting up averages of about 15.5 points, 3 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. Ellis would be involved in a 3-team trade in the offseason that saw him end up on the Spurs. So now a 32-year-old Ellis found himself on a team with a true superstar in David Robinson, and would pair with Sean Elliott on the wings to provide great shooting, as Ellis would average basically 50% from the field and 40% from 3, in a starting role that saw him finish as the team's 3rd leading scorer. The Spurs would finish 49-33, and this would be Ellis's first postseason appearance in 4 seasons. The Spurs would face the Portland Trailblazers in round 1, and even though Ellis would struggle from 3 this series, he would score a team-high 21 in the series-clinching Game 4 win. The second round brought the Suns, led by MVP Charles Barkley, who would lead them to a 6-game series win. Ellis was up and down this series as he had a combined 10 points on 4 of 14 from the field in the first 2 games, but would also score 20 in Game 3 and 24 in Game 5. And Ellis's regular season would see him average about 16.5 points, 4 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. The Spurs made an offseason trade where they would lose the scoring of Sean Elliott but gain the defense and rebounding of Dennis Rodman, who would also help them improve to the second-ranked defense in the league. Ellis would be the team's second leading scorer behind the league leading scorer Robinson, and he would participate in the 3-point shootout and finish in 4th place. This season was historic for Ellis, as on March 19th versus Sacramento, he became the first player in NBA history to reach 1,000 made threes, and the Spurs would go 55-27 on the season, leading to a first-round matchup versus the Jazz. But after a Game 1 blowout of Utah, the Spurs would drop 3 in a row to lose the series in 4. Ellis would really struggle in this series, as even though he remained the Spurs' second leading scorer, he shot below 40% from the field and below 30% from 3. And his regular season saw him average about 15 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. Ellis was a free agent and signed with Denver as a 3-point specialist due to the Nuggets being the worst 3-point shooting team in the league the year prior. And on top of that, the league had moved the 3-point line almost 2 feet closer to the hoop beginning this year. Ellis would return to a bench role on a Nuggets team with guys like Dikembe Mutombo, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, and promising rookie Jalen Rose. Ellis's reduced role would see him put up his lowest scoring average since his Dallas days, but he would still do what he was signed to do, as he shot over 40% from 3. The Nuggets weren't great, but they had a balanced scoring attack with 7 players averaging double figures, and a defense led by Defensive Player of the Year, Mutombo. So they were able to finish with a 41-41 record and get a first-round matchup with Ellis's former team, the Spurs. But the Nuggets were swept, even though Mutombo held league MVP Robinson to just 19 points and 6.7 rebounds on less than 43% shooting. Ellis would be the team's 3rd leading scorer, but his efficiency was an issue again, as he shot below 36% from the field and below 31% from 3. And his regular season would see him average about 11.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, and half an assist per game. 96 saw an increased role for Ellis, as he would start 52 of the 81 games he played and up his scoring average by nearly 4 points per game. He would also get a full season under his former Seattle coach Bernie Bickerstaff, who was hired midway through the previous season, and the team also added athletic forward Antonio McDyess in the draft. Unfortunately, this season would be marred by moral and religious differences between Abdul Rauf and the league, and Abdul Rauf would only end up playing 57 games this year for a 35-47 Nuggets team that missed the playoffs. And Ellis's improved season would see him average about 15 points, 4 rebounds, and 1.5 assists per game. Due to his religious differences, Abdul Rauf would be traded to the Kings in the summer, and Mutombo would sign with the Hawks, while Rose would be traded to the Pacers for a package including Mark Jackson and Ricky Pierce prior to the year. Additionally, this trade saw a pick swap, as the Nuggets sent the 10th pick and received the 23rd pick, as Nuggets head coach and president Bickerstaff felt there was no value in the draft at 10. But this was the 96 draft, and it would later be proven that there was plenty of value after 10. So the Nuggets were not expected to be a good team, and they weren't. Bickerstaff resigned after a 4-9 start, handing the reins to Dick Motta, Ellis's former coach in Dallas. But he couldn't save the Nuggets, who went 17-52 the rest of the way for a 21-61 finish. Ellis maintained his larger role as he started 51 out of 82 games played and was the team's 3rd leading scorer. He would sink a career-high 2.3 threes per game while attempting a career-high 6.4 per game, and in turn would participate in his 6th 3-point contest, but also finish 6th, the worst finish of his career. But his regular season saw him average about 16.5 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 2 assists per game. Ellis would be traded back to Seattle weeks before the 98 season and join a Sonics team led by former teammates Gary Payton and Detlef Schrempf, along with all-star Vin Baker and aging Hersey Hawkins. The league opted to move the 3-point line back to its original distance this year, but that didn't bother Ellis, as he led the league by shooting 46.4% from deep and would participate in the final 3-point contest of his career, finishing 3rd. He would return to a complete bench role as he was the team's 6th man, playing 79 games off the bench and finishing 4th in scoring for a 61-21 Sonics team who made the playoffs and beat the T-Wolves in round 1 before losing to the Lakers in round 2. However, Ellis would really struggle these playoffs and only cracked double figures once in a 16-point Game 3 loss to LA. And for the regular season, Ellis would average about 12 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. Ellis would remain on the team for the lockout-shortened season, where he would play 48 games in his 6th-man role, tying for 4th on the team in scoring. But the Sonics could only muster a 25-25 record, which would not be good enough for a playoff berth. And Ellis would finish the regular season averaging about 10.5 points, 2.5 rebounds, and 1 assist per game. Ellis played 42 games in 2000 and split this time between the Bucks and the Hornets, never making much of an impact on either team, as he would end his career on a 49-33 Hornets team who lost to the Sixers in the first round of the playoffs, a postseason in which Ellis did not play in. And Ellis's final NBA season saw him average about 4 points, 1.5 rebounds, and half an assist per game. Ellis's career would be revolutionary with his shooting ability, as he was probably the first true marksman in the NBA, retiring 2nd on the all-time list with 1,719 made threes. But his best years were also completely engulfed with character issues and really serious off-the-court problems that easily could have altered or ended his career a lot earlier. Luckily, he was able to leave these issues in the past, for the most part, after leaving Seattle, and turn himself into a respectable role player for the rest of his career. But if we're just talking about his on-the-court play, he had all the offensive talent you could ask for, but was held back behind 2 greats in Dallas, and then showed instantly what he was about when he got to Seattle. He had his best years of his career, and one of the best 4-year stretches of anyone in the league during that time for the Sonics. And even though he couldn't replicate those years in Seattle, getting out of Seattle likely prolonged his career, and may have even saved his life with the path he seemed to be going down. He was never again a star, but he was consistent and effective for years afterwards. But his play wasn't flashy, and he was reserved, so his actual on-court contributions can easily be overlooked. Yet in his prime, Dale Ellis was the best shooter the league had ever seen up to that point, but also just one of the top players in the league, plain and simple. But that's it for today's episode. Hope you enjoyed, and remember to subscribe for more episodes like this one. If you liked it, check out this one on his Dallas and Seattle teammate, or this one on one of his teammates in Charlotte. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.